Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Defiant and watched the alien ships take their positions. Hundreds of them formed a wide circle around Earth's solar system. Each ship was massive, dark, and built for war. They belonged to the Galactic Senate, and they were here to cut Earth off from the rest of the galaxy. Jake had seen this coming for months. The Senate did not like humans. They said humans were too wild, too unpredictable. Other alien races had joined the galactic community slowly, carefully following all the Senate's rules. Humans had burst into space like a fire, exploring everywhere and building things the Senate had never seen before. The worst part was that humans refused to let the Senate control their military. Every other species in the galaxy had given up their weapons and let the Senate protect them. Earth said no. Earth would protect itself. 3 days ago, Captain Lisa Grant had delivered Earth's final answer to the Senate chambers on Galaxis Prime. She had stood before thousands of alien senators and said the words that started this war. Earth governs itself, she had told them. We will trade freely, explore freely, and defend ourselves as we see fit. Your authority ends where our atmosphere begins. The alien Chancellor Vextar had been furious. The Zephyrians controlled the Senate, and no one had ever spoken to them like that. Vextar was old, older than human civilization, and he had crushed dozens of rebellious species over the centuries. He activated the Sanctions protocol immediately. Now those sanctions were here. No human ship could leave the solar system. No alien ship could enter. No trade, no communication, no contact with the outside galaxy. Earth was alone. Jake turned to his communications officer. Any word from the other defense ships? All ships report ready, sir. The blockade is complete. They're not letting anything through. Jake nodded. The Senate thought this would break humanity in months. They had done this before to other species. Cut them off, watch them suffer, wait for them to beg for mercy. It always worked. But the aliens did not understand humans. General Casey Brooks entered the bridge. She was the head of Earth's Strategic Command, and she looked calm despite the enemy fleet surrounding them. Admiral, I need to brief you on the next phase. They walked to the secure briefing room. On the wall was a map of known space with red markers showing Senate positions and blue markers showing human assets. There were far more red markers than blue ones. The Senate thinks we're trapped, Casey said. They think we'll run out of resources and surrender. They're wrong. She pressed a button and the map changed. New blue markers appeared in distant parts of space, areas the Senate had never properly explored. We've been preparing for this day since first contact. While they thought we were just exploring for fun, we were setting up supply bases, making contact with species they don't even know exist. Jake studied the map. How many ships do we have out there? Enough. And they're not coming back to help us break the blockade. They have a different mission. Casey pulled up another display. It showed intelligence reports about the Senate's member species. Most were listed as controlled or dependent. Only a few were marked as willing allies. The Senate's power comes from fear, Casey explained. They keep everyone weak and divided, but there are species out there who hate them. Species who would fight if they thought they could win. Jake began to understand. We're not planning to break the blockade. We're planning to make the Senate fall apart from the inside. Exactly. Let them sit here watching Earth while we tear down their empire piece by piece. Meanwhile, on Earth, Senator Marcus Cole was addressing the Global Assembly. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in the Great Hall, their faces showing determination rather than fear. Citizens of Earth, Marcus began. Today, the Galactic Senate has declared economic war on our planet. They believe isolation will break our spirit. They believe we will beg for their forgiveness and accept their control. He paused, looking out at the crowd. They are about to learn that humanity's greatest achievements have always come when we were backed against the wall. When we had no choice but to innovate, to fight, to prove that the impossible was just another challenge to overcome. The assembly erupted in applause. Earth's leaders had spent years preparing for this moment. The planet was more united than it had ever been, bound together by the shared threat of alien domination. We will not surrender our freedom, Marcus continued. We will not accept their authority, and we will show the galaxy what happens when you try to cage humanity. Back on the Defiant, Jake received a message from Earth Command. It was simple. Operation Starbreak is now active. Good hunting. He smiled grimly and turned to his crew. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate thinks this is a siege. They're sitting out there waiting for us to give up. They have no idea what's coming. The communications officer looked up from her station. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the blockade fleet. They're demanding our surrender. Ignore them, Jake said. Let them wait. Every day they spend watching us is another day our people are out there working. Through the view screen, he could see the distant lights of the alien ships. They looked so confident, so sure of their victory. The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had crushed every rebellion, absorbed every independent species, turned free worlds into puppet states, but they had never faced humans before. The Senate's sanctions were meant to be Earth's punishment for refusing to submit. Instead, they were about to become the galaxy's liberation. While the aliens watched and waited for humanity to break, human ships were already moving through the darkness beyond the Senate's reach. Casey was right. Humanity's greatest victories had always come when they were cornered. When the odds were impossible and everyone said it could not be done. The aliens thought they were punishing Earth. They thought they were teaching humanity a lesson about the price of defiance. They were about to learn that sometimes, when you push humans too far, they don't just push back. They tear down everything you've built and replace it with something better. The siege of Earth had begun. But Jake Morrison knew the truth that the Senate would learn too late. They weren't the ones doing the sieging. They were the ones about to be surrounded. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Senate placed their blockade around Earth. Chancellor Vextar stood in his command center on Galaxis Prime, staring at reports that made no sense. Every alien leader expected the same thing. Humans would break under pressure. They would run out of food, medicine, or fuel. They would send desperate messages begging for mercy. Instead, there was only silence. Still no communications from Earth? Vextar asked his aide. None, Chancellor. Our monitoring stations detect normal life signs on the planet, but no attempts to contact us or break through the blockade. Vextar frowned. This was not how sanctions worked. Rebellious species always tried to negotiate after a few months. They always sent secret messages offering to compromise, but the humans had simply gone quiet. What about their ships and other systems? That's the strange part, sir. All human vessels have disappeared from known space. Our trade partners report no human contact in months. Even our spy networks have found nothing. Far from the Senate's watching eyes, Commander Ryan Hayes stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Pioneer. Around him, his crew worked quietly as they mapped another unexplored star system. This was their 15th new system in 2 months, and each one brought new discoveries. Commander, called his science officer, we're detecting artificial structures on the 3rd planet. Looks like ruins of some kind. Ryan nodded. Take us in for a closer look, and send the data back to Haven Base. Haven 7 was humanity's greatest secret. While the Senate thought all human ships were trapped near Earth, hundreds of vessels had been exploring the galaxy's outer regions for years. They had found things the Senate either didn't know about or chose to ignore, like the Vorthan refugees. Dr. Emma Carter worked in her laboratory on Haven 7, studying tissue samples from their newest allies. The Vorthons were a peaceful species who had fled their homeworld when the Zephyrian Empire expanded into their territory. They were brilliant engineers, and they hated the Senate as much as humans did. The genetic modifications are fascinating, Emma told her assistant. The Senate has been altering conquered species for centuries, making them more docile and dependent. But the Vorthons who escaped still have their original intelligence. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from Ryan's ship, reporting the discovery of more ancient ruins. Emma studied the images and felt her excitement grow. These weren't just old buildings. They were evidence of something the Senate had tried to erase from history. Get me Colonel Murphy, she said. He needs to see this. Colonel Kevin Murphy oversaw humanity's most important project from a hidden base in the asteroid belt of the Haven system. Around him, thousands of workers from dozens of species labored on something the galaxy had never seen. A truly unified fleet. The ships being built here combined the best technology from every species that had joined humanity's alliance. Vorthan engineering made them faster. Nexus collective computing made them smarter. Human innovation made them deadly. But more importantly, they were being built by free people working together, not slaves following orders. Colonel, his aide reported, Dr. Carter is requesting immediate communication. She says it's about the historical project. Kevin accepted the call. Emma's face appeared on his screen and she looked excited. Kevin, we've found proof. The ruins Ryan discovered match the pattern we've been tracking. The Senate didn't just conquer the galaxy. They destroyed the original galactic civilization. Kevin leaned forward. You're certain? Completely. There was a species called the Builders who achieved true galactic unity 3,000 years ago. They had technology that makes the Senate look primitive, but something wiped them out completely. Every trace of their civilization was erased except for these hidden ruins. And you think the Senate did it? I think the Senate's ancestors did it. Then they built their empire on the Builders' bones using stolen technology to keep everyone else from reaching the same level. This changed everything. The Senate wasn't just corrupt. They were built on genocide. Kevin stood up. Emma, I want you to document everything. Every piece of evidence, every connection. We're going to show the galaxy what their leaders really are. Meanwhile, on a dozen hidden worlds, human agents worked with local resistance movements. Captain Tony Rodriguez led a team on the mining world Kepler 442c, where the native Helians had been enslaved for 3 centuries. The Senate patrol changes shifts every 6 hours, Tony explained to the Helian leaders. We hit their communication array first, then their landing bay. By the time they call for help, we'll have freed your people and destroyed their mining equipment. The Helian elder looked worried. But what happens after? The Senate will send more ships. They will punish us, Tony smiled. No, they won't, because by the time they figure out what happened here, we'll have hit a dozen other worlds. They can't punish everyone. The raid went perfectly. Tony's team disabled the Senate forces in under an hour, and the Helians destroyed every piece of mining equipment on the planet. When the dust settled, another world was free, and humanity had gained new allies with industrial knowledge the Senate had tried to suppress. Back on Galaxis Prime, Chancellor Vextar grew more frustrated every day. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Trade ships were disappearing. Communication relays were going offline. Minor rebellions were breaking out on worlds that had been peaceful for centuries. This cannot be connected to the humans, his military advisor insisted. They are trapped in their system. Our blockade is absolute. Then explain these attacks, Vextar demanded. Explain how perfectly coordinated strikes are happening across 1,000 light-years of space. His advisor had no answer. The Senate's intelligence networks were vast, but they were designed to watch known threats. They had no idea how to track an enemy that had been preparing for years in places they never thought to look. Dr. Emma Carter made her breakthrough discovery on the ancient world of Praxis 9. Deep underground, in ruins older than recorded history, she found something that made her blood run cold. The chamber was filled with preserved records from the Builder civilization. The writing was complex, but human computers could translate it. What Emma read changed her understanding of galactic history forever. The Builders had been peaceful. They had achieved faster-than-light travel, unlimited energy, and perfect cooperation between hundreds of species. They had been building a true galactic paradise. Then the ancestors of the Zephyrians arrived. They were refugees from another galaxy, claiming their homeworld had been destroyed. The Builders welcomed them, gave them sanctuary, shared their technology. The Zephyrians repaid this kindness by stealing everything and destroying their hosts. They used Builder technology to conquer the galaxy, then spent thousands of years erasing all evidence of their crimes. Emma transmitted her findings to every human base simultaneously. The truth was finally clear. The Senate didn't just rule through fear and oppression. Their entire civilization was built on the greatest genocide in galactic history. As the message spread through humanity's hidden network, something fundamental changed. This wasn't just about Earth's freedom anymore. This was about justice for crimes that had been covered up for millennia. Colonel Murphy stood in his command center and watched as reports came in from across the galaxy. Human agents were sharing the evidence with resistance movements on every world. The truth about the Builders was spreading despite the Senate's attempts to control information. Sir, his communication officer reported, we're receiving messages from liberation movements on over 200 worlds. They're all asking the same question: when do we strike? Kevin looked at the tactical display showing their hidden fleet. Thousands of ships built by free people using technology the Senate thought was lost forever, the greatest military force ever assembled outside Senate control. He opened a channel to all human commanders. This is Colonel Murphy to all units. Phase 1 is complete. We have the truth, we have the allies, and we have the ships. It's time to show the galaxy what freedom looks like. The Senate had sanctioned Earth to break humanity's spirit. Instead, they had given humans the time and motivation to build something that would break the Senate itself. The long preparation was over. The real war was about to begin. 1 year after the blockade began, something was very wrong in the galaxy. Senate patrol fleets were disappearing without a trace. Not destroyed in battle, not captured, just gone. Entire squadrons would miss their check-in times, and when rescue ships arrived, they found nothing but empty space. Lieutenant Commander Ashley Stone crouched in the maintenance tunnel of a captured Senate destroyer, listening to the alien crew above her. The ship was carrying supplies to a Senate military base, but it would never reach its destination. Her team had been aboard for 3 days studying the enemy systems and preparing for the mission. "Ghost Leader, this is Ghost 7, whispered her demolitions expert through the comm. "Charges are set on the engine core. Ready for extraction," Ashley smiled. The Senate called them ghosts because no one ever saw them coming. Human stealth technology, improved with Vorthon engineering and Nexus collective computing, made their ships invisible to Senate sensors. They could strike anywhere, anytime, and vanish before anyone knew what happened. All teams execute. 30 seconds to fireworks. The human team moved through the ship like shadows, stunning guards with non-lethal weapons and downloading critical data from the ship's computers. As they reached their extraction point, Ashley triggered the timer on the memory wipe virus her team had installed in the ship's systems. In 30 seconds, every piece of data on the ship would be erased. The crew would survive, but they would have no memory of the last week and no idea what had happened to them. The human stealth ship Shadow appeared beside the destroyer just long enough for Ashley's team to beam aboard. As they pulled away, the Senate ship drifted helplessly, its crew confused and its cargo missing. "Another successful ghost hunt," Ashley reported to her captain. "What's our next target?" Meanwhile, on the liberated world of New Geneva, Captain Tony Rodriguez was preparing for a much larger operation. The planet had been a Senate colony for 2 centuries, its people forced to mine rare metals for the Empire. Now it was free, and its population was eager to help other worlds achieve the same freedom. "The intelligence is solid," Tony explained to his mixed team of humans and aliens. "Kepler 442c has been under Senate control for 300 years. The Helian people are natural engineers, but they've been kept as slaves in their own minds. If we can free them, we gain valuable allies and deny the Senate a major source of industrial materials." The assault team included humans, Vorthons, and even a few members of the mechanical Nexus collective. It was the kind of cooperation the Senate had spent millennia preventing, and it was devastatingly effective. The liberation of Kepler 442c took less than 6 hours. Tony's team hit the Senate garrison at dawn, using precise strikes to disable defenses without harming civilians. The Helian workers, who had been planning their own rebellion for years, rose up and seized control of the mining facilities. When the dust settled, the planet was free. The Senate garrison was captured, not killed. The mining equipment was repurposed for building defensive installations. And most importantly, the Helian people had their freedom back for the first time in centuries. "This is just the beginning," Tony told the Helian leader as human ships helped evacuate the former slaves. "There are hundreds of worlds like yours. Together we can free them all." The Senate's response was swift and brutal. Chancellor Vextar, growing desperate as reports of liberation continued to flood in, decided to make an example. When the mining colony at Rigel 7 was found to be hiding human sympathizers, he ordered the orbital bombardment of civilian targets. The massacre was broadcast across the galaxy as a warning. Thousands of innocent miners died in the attack, their crime being nothing more than listening to human messages about freedom. But the Senate's brutality backfired completely. Dr. Emma Carter, now broadcasting from the hidden base on New Geneva, delivered a response that spread through the galactic underground faster than any Senate propaganda. "Citizens of the galaxy," she said, her voice calm but filled with righteous anger, "you have just witnessed the true face of Senate justice. Thousands of innocent people were murdered for the crime of dreaming about freedom. Children, families, workers who only wanted to live their own lives." The broadcast showed images from the Builder ruins, evidence of the ancient genocide that founded the Senate's power. Then it showed the recent liberation of Kepler 442c, where no Senate personnel had been killed despite their complete defeat. "The Senate calls us terrorists for freeing slaves," Emma continued. "They call us criminals for stopping genocide. If choosing freedom over oppression makes us terrorists, then we are proud to be what they fear most, people who refuse to bow down to tyrants. The message reached every corner of the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, people who had never heard of humans began to understand that resistance was possible. The Senate's greatest weapon had always been the belief that their rule was inevitable. That belief was cracking. General Casey Brooks watched the intelligence reports flow in from her command center on Haven 7. The underground war was exceeding all expectations. Every week brought news of new liberated worlds, new species joining the Alliance, new defeats for Senate forces. The pattern is clear, her intelligence chief reported. Senate control is weakening in the outer systems. They're pulling their forces back to protect core worlds, which leaves the frontier territories effectively undefended. Casey studied the tactical display. The galaxy was color-coded to show areas of control. Red for the Senate, blue for the Human Alliance, yellow for contested space. A year ago, the map had been almost entirely red. Now blue and yellow covered nearly half the galaxy. What about their response to the Rigel 7 broadcast? Massive. Resistance movements on over 300 worlds have gone active. They're demanding the same liberation package we gave to Kepler 442c. Arms, training, and support for establishing self-governance. Casey smiled grimly. The Senate's brutality was doing more to recruit allies than human propaganda ever could. Every act of oppression reminded the galaxy's people why they needed to be free. But she also knew the Senate wouldn't tolerate this challenge much longer. Intelligence indicated they were developing something called the Cleansing Protocol. The details were unclear, but the name was ominous enough. Admiral Jake Morrison received the warning while commanding the defense of Earth. The blockade was still in place, but it had become meaningless. Senate ships sat in space watching a planet that no longer mattered to the war's outcome. The real battles were happening in systems the Senate had never thought to defend. Admiral, his communication officer reported, we're receiving a priority message from General Brooks. Eyes only. Jake read the message twice before he believed it. The Senate was preparing to deploy planet-killing weapons, not just against military targets, but against any world suspected of harboring human sympathizers. The message was clear. Surrender now, or watch entire civilizations burn. Jake called an emergency meeting with Earth's leadership. Senator Marcus Cole arrived within minutes, along with the heads of every major government on the planet. They're escalating, Jake explained. Our intelligence suggests they're planning to destroy populated worlds to break the resistance. Billions of innocent lives. Senator Cole was quiet for a long moment. What are our options? We can surrender and hope they honor their word about sparing civilian populations. Or we can escalate ourselves, meaning, Jake pulled up a new tactical display. It showed the location of every human ship, every allied fleet, every liberated world in the galaxy. The scope was staggering. We have enough forces to take the war directly to the Senate, not just liberation raids on frontier worlds, a direct assault on their core systems, on Galaxis Prime itself. The room fell silent. Attacking the Senate's capital was something no species had attempted in 2,000 years. The risks? Cole asked. Total. If we fail, every human in the galaxy dies. Every world we've liberated gets destroyed. But if we succeed, we end this forever, Cole finished. No more Senate. No more empire. No more oppression. The vote was unanimous. Earth would not surrender to save itself if it meant condemning the rest of the galaxy to slavery. The underground war had shown that victory was possible. Now it was time to finish what the Senate had started. Jake opened a channel to every human commander in the galaxy. All units, this is Admiral Morrison. Operation Starbreak enters its final phase. Target, Galaxis Prime. Mission, end the Galactic Senate forever. The Senate thought they were tightening the noose around humanity's neck. They were about to learn that sometimes when you pull too hard on a chain, it breaks. The Cleansing Protocol was the Senate's final solution. Massive fleets converged on 12 worlds suspected of harboring human sympathizers, planet-killing orbital platforms, ancient weapons from the builder civilization that the Senate had stolen and corrupted. Moved into position around populated worlds, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Liberation, watching the tactical display that showed enemy movements across the galaxy. The Senate had committed everything to this operation. Every major fleet, every reserve unit, every piece of advanced technology they possessed. Admiral, his communication officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Senate fleet. It's addressed to all human forces. Put it through. Chancellor Vextar's ancient face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Jake could see the bridge of a massive warship, probably the Senate flagship. The alien leader looked tired but determined. Humans of Earth and their terrorist allies, Vextar began. You have exactly 1 standard hour to surrender unconditionally. All human military forces will stand down. All resistance leaders will surrender for execution. Earth will submit to complete Senate authority. The Chancellor paused, his dark eyes gleaming with cold fury. If you refuse, we will demonstrate the price of defying galactic order. 12 worlds will be sterilized completely. Billions will die. Their blood will be on your hands, not ours. The transmission ended. Jake's bridge crew looked at him, waiting for orders. Around the galaxy, every human commander was receiving the same ultimatum. Jake opened a channel to all Allied forces. This is Admiral Morrison to all Liberation Fleet commanders. The Senate has shown their true face. They would rather commit genocide than allow freedom to exist. That tells us everything we need to know about what we're fighting against. He paused, looking at his tactical display. Hundreds of ships showed as blue dots scattered across the galaxy. Each one represented free people who had chosen to fight rather than submit. Execute Operation Starfall. All units converge on your assigned targets. It's time to end this. The response was immediate. Across a dozen star systems, human and allied fleets emerged from hiding and began their coordinated assault. But the main target wasn't the planet killer platforms. It was the Senate itself. Colonel Kevin Murphy led the first wave of the assault on Galaxis Station, the massive space station that housed the Senate government. His ships had been hiding in the outer system for weeks, waiting for this moment. All fighters launch, Kevin ordered as his fleet closed with the station's defenses. Remember, our goal is to disable, not destroy. There are millions of civilians on that station. The battle for Galaxis Station was unlike anything in galactic history. Senate defense forces had prepared for external assault, but they had never faced an enemy that could strike from inside their own territory. Human stealth technology allowed strike teams to appear anywhere, anytime. Lieutenant Commander Ashley Stone led her ghost teams in a precision assault on the station's command center. Her people moved through maintenance tunnels and service corridors, avoiding the main battles while targeting critical systems. Ghost teams, this is the target, Ashley whispered as they reached a heavily defended control room. Disable the planetary defense grid. Do not harm civilians unless they fire first. The assault was over in minutes. Senate security forces were trained to suppress rebellions by their own people, not to fight professional soldiers with superior equipment. Ashley's team secured the control room without firing a shot, using stunners to disable guards and technical viruses to shut down weapon systems. Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Hayes was leading a different kind of mission in the Zephyrian home system. His target wasn't military installations but communication networks. If the Senate couldn't coordinate their forces, their superior numbers would become meaningless. Communications hub secured, Ryan reported as his team finished installing human-designed jamming equipment. The Senate's main fleets are now operating blind. But the most important mission was happening on the ancient world of Praxis 9, where Dr. Emma Carter was preparing for the final revelation. The truth about the Builder civilization wasn't just historical evidence. It was the key to turning the Senate's own weapons against them. The control codes are all here, Emma explained to her technical team as they worked in the underground Builder archive. Every piece of Senate technology, including their planet killers, is based on stolen Builder systems. And the Builders built failsafes into everything. Emma's discovery was staggering. The Builder civilization had been peaceful, but they weren't naive. They had hidden shutdown codes in all their technology, codes that would prevent their weapons from being used for genocide. The Senate had used these weapons for thousands of years without knowing that their victims' ancestors had left a way to stop them. Emma to all fleet commanders, she broadcast as her team finished decoding the ancient files. I'm transmitting Builder override codes to every ship. These will disable any Senate weapon system based on Builder technology, including the planet killers. The battle turned in an instant. As the override codes spread through the human fleet, Senate weapons began shutting down across the galaxy. Planet killer platforms powered down just as they prepared to fire. Warship weapons went offline. Even basic shields and engines began failing as the Builder failsafes activated, but the Senate still had numbers. Even without their advanced weapons, they had millions of ships and billions of soldiers. The fighting that followed was brutal and desperate. Captain Tony Rodriguez found himself in the middle of the largest space battle in galactic history as Senate and Liberation fleets collided in the Galaxis system. His ship, the Freedom, was just one of thousands locked in deadly combat around the Senate capital. "Tony, this is Ashley," came the transmission from inside Galaxis Station. "We've secured the command center, but we need backup. The Senate's pulling back their elite guard units to protect the inner chambers." "On my way," Tony replied, bringing his ship alongside the massive station. Boarding teams prepare for assault. The battle for the Senate chambers was personal. Tony's boarding party fought through corridors filled with the wealth of 1,000 conquered worlds. Alien artifacts, stolen treasures, and monuments to Senate power filled every room, and in many places they found evidence of genocide. Preserved specimens from extinct species, weapons designed specifically to kill certain alien types, records of systematic extermination campaigns that had wiped entire civilizations from existence. "No wonder they fought so hard to keep this secret," Tony muttered as his team approached the main Senate chamber. "This isn't just a government. It's a monument to mass murder." The final resistance came at the Senate chamber itself. Chancellor Vextar had barricaded himself inside with his personal guard, determined to make a last stand rather than face justice for his crimes. "You cannot rule the galaxy," Vextar shouted as Tony's forces breached the chamber. "You think you can do better than we have? You'll see chaos. You'll see war. You'll beg for our return." Captain Lisa Grant, Earth's chief diplomat, had arrived with the final assault wave. She walked calmly through the firefight, her diplomatic immunity protecting her even here. "We're not here to rule anyone," she told Vextar as Senate guards surrendered around him. "We're here to make sure no one else does either." The Chancellor's capture marked the end of organized Senate resistance. Across the galaxy, the planet killer platforms had been permanently disabled by the Builder Codes. Senate fleets were surrendering or fleeing into deep space. The Liberation forces had won, but the cost had been enormous. Admiral Morrison received damage reports from across the galaxy. Hundreds of ships lost, thousands of casualties, entire worlds scarred by the final battles. But for the first time in galactic history, the tyranny that had ruled for millennia was broken. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," he broadcast to the combined Liberation fleet. "The Galactic Senate has fallen. Chancellor Vextar is in custody. The planet killer weapons are disabled permanently." He paused, looking out at the wreckage of the Senate fleet drifting around Galaxis Station. "But our work is not finished. We didn't fight this war to replace one empire with another. We fought to make sure that no species would ever again face the choice between freedom and survival. The hardest part was just beginning. Hundreds of worlds needed new governments. Thousands of species needed to learn how to govern themselves after millennia of oppression. The galaxy was free, but freedom without structure would lead to chaos." Senator Marcus Cole arrived on Galaxis Station with the provisional government team. Earth's leaders had spent months preparing for this moment, studying the records of every successful revolution in human history. "The Federation Charter is ready," Marcus told the assembled Liberation commanders. "Every species gets representation. Every world gets self-governance. And most importantly, no member can exert authority over another." It was an ambitious plan, a galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. Many thought it was impossible. But then again, most had thought defeating the Senate was impossible too. The galaxy was about to learn that humans specialized in making the impossible happen. The final assault on Galaxis Prime took 3 days, not because the fighting was fierce, but because humanity insisted on doing it right. Colonel Kevin Murphy led his Marines through the ancient corridors of the Senate's inner sanctum, but they moved carefully. Every room contained historical artifacts that belonged to the species the Senate had conquered. Every corridor held evidence of crimes that needed to be preserved for history. "Remember," Kevin told his troops as they approached the Chancellor's private chambers, "we're not conquerors. We're liberators. That means everything we do here matters." They found Chancellor Vextar in his personal office, surrounded by treasures stolen from 100 worlds. The ancient Zephyrian leader sat behind a desk made from the bones of an extinct species, still defiant even as his empire crumbled around him. "You have no idea what you've done," Vextar said as human soldiers secured the room. "The galaxy needs order. It needs structure. Without the Senate, there will be chaos, war, Suffering. Captain Lisa Grant entered the office, her diplomatic credentials giving her the right to speak for Earth in this historic moment. She looked around the room, taking in the evidence of genocide and oppression that decorated every surface. "Chancellor," she said calmly, "you're under arrest for crimes against sapient life. You and your government will face trial for genocide, slavery, and systematic oppression spanning thousands of years." Vextar laughed bitterly. "Trial? Who will judge us, you? Your children playing with forces you don't understand. This galaxy has been stable for millennia under our rule." "Stable for whom?" Lisa asked. "For the Helians who spent 3 centuries as slaves in their own minds? For the Vorthans you drove from their homeworld? For the dozens of species you exterminated completely?" She gestured to the bone desk. "For whatever people you murdered to make your furniture?" The Chancellor had no answer. As human forces secured the government complex, the truth about Senate rule was being broadcast across the galaxy. Hidden archives revealed the extent of their crimes. Systematic genocide, deliberate technological suppression, the breeding of entire species for slavery. But the humans did something the galaxy had never seen before. They didn't execute the Senate leaders. They didn't seize their wealth. Instead, they organized trials where evidence was presented publicly, and sentences were determined by representatives from every affected species. Dr. Emma Carter led the historical commission that documented Senate crimes. Working with scholars from dozens of worlds, they compiled the complete record of galactic oppression. The evidence filled entire libraries, but it also served another purpose. It showed every species in the galaxy that they shared a common history of suffering under Senate rule. Unity through shared trauma, Emma explained to her team. The Senate kept everyone isolated and afraid. Now they know they weren't alone. The dissolution of the Galactic Senate wasn't followed by human rule. Senator Marcus Cole worked with representatives from over 300 species to create something unprecedented: the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds. The principle is simple. Marcus explained to the Constitutional Convention, held in the same chamber where the Senate had once ruled. No member world can exert authority over another. Period. We can trade, we can cooperate, we can help each other. But no one rules anyone else. The debates were fierce. Many species had never governed themselves. Others had forgotten how. Some argued that complete independence would lead to chaos and conflict. The humans had an answer for every objection, drawn from their own history of struggle for freedom. "Democracy is messy," admitted General Casey Brooks as she addressed concerns about self-governance. "Freedom means people will make mistakes. But slavery is worse than any mistake free people can make." The Federation charter that emerged was unlike any government in galactic history. Each member world maintained complete internal sovereignty. The Federation existed only to mediate disputes, coordinate trade, and defend against external threats. Most importantly, the charter contained humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy: the absolute right to say no. Admiral Jake Morrison found himself commanding not a war fleet, but a hospital ship. The Liberation had been converted to provide medical aid to worlds damaged in the fighting. It was a fitting symbol of the change that was sweeping the galaxy. "Admiral," his medical officer reported, "we've completed treatment for the radiation survivors from Rigel 7. They're ready to return home." Jake nodded. The world that had been bombed by the Senate as an example was being rebuilt by the Federation, not as a memorial to Senate brutality, but as a symbol of renewal. He walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stream of ships moving between worlds. Trade vessels, exploration ships, diplomatic missions. For the first time in galactic history, all of them moved freely without asking permission from any central authority. A young ensign approached him. She was from one of the recently liberated worlds, eager to serve in the Federation fleet. "Admiral," she asked, "do you think we did the right thing? All this fighting, all these lives lost? Was it worth it?" Jake considered the question carefully. The war had cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Entire fleets had been destroyed. Some worlds were still recovering from the battles that had freed them. "Ensign," he said finally, "freedom is never free. But look around you. For the first time in galactic history, every species gets to choose their own path. No one has to bow to anyone else. That's worth any price." The young officer nodded and returned to her duties. Jake remained at the observation deck, watching the flow of free traffic between the stars. Dr. Emma Carter made her final discovery in the Builder archives on Praxis 9. Deep in the ancient files, she found something that changed her understanding of galactic history once again. The Builders hadn't just been destroyed by the ancestors of the Zephyrians. They had known it was coming. The ancient species had seen the signs of aggression and had a choice: fight back with their superior technology, or accept destruction rather than become conquerors themselves. They had chosen to die rather than become the very thing they opposed. "They left us a message," Emma told Colonel Murphy as they stood in the ancient archive chamber. "The Builders knew that someday someone would find their records and learn the truth. They wanted us to know that we had a choice too. The message was simple but profound. Let our mistakes guide you to wisdom. Power corrupts all who seek it. True strength comes from knowing when not to use power at all." The humans had learned that lesson well. When offered the chance to rule the galaxy themselves, they had refused. When given the opportunity to punish their enemies, they had chosen justice instead. When faced with the choice between order and freedom, they had chosen freedom every time. Senator Marcus Cole stood in the new Federation Council chambers, preparing to address the galaxy's representatives. The diversity was staggering. Hundreds of different species, all working together as equals for the first time in galactic history. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began. "1 year ago, the Galactic Senate sanctioned Earth for refusing to submit to their authority. They thought isolation would break our spirit. They thought we would beg for their forgiveness." The chamber was silent as representatives from across the galaxy listened. Instead, humanity showed the galaxy something it had forgotten: the power of saying no. The right to choose your own path, the strength that comes from standing together as equals rather than kneeling as subjects. Marcus paused, looking out at the assembled delegates. "The Senate sanctioned Earth for being ungovernable," humanity answered by making governance obsolete. "We didn't defeat the Senate to replace them. We defeated them to ensure that no one would ever again have the power to rule over free people." The response was overwhelming. Representatives from hundreds of worlds rose to their feet, applauding not just humanity's victory, but the future they had all built together. But the most important moment came later, in a quiet conversation between Admiral Morrison and Senator Cole, as they watched Federation ships departing for missions across the galaxy. "Do you think this will last?" Cole asked. "The Federation, the freedom, the cooperation?" Jake smiled. "Nothing lasts forever, Marcus. But we've given every species in the galaxy the tools to fight for their freedom. We've shown them that tyranny isn't inevitable. That's something no dictator can ever take away." He pointed to the ships heading out into the darkness between stars. "Every one of those ships carries free people making their own choices. Some will make mistakes. Some will face new challenges. But they'll face them as free beings, not as slaves." The story ended where it began, with humanity facing impossible odds. But this time they weren't alone. Across the galaxy, hundreds of species had learned the lesson humans had taught them: that freedom was worth fighting for, and that no one had the right to rule over another. The Galactic Senate had sanctioned Earth to break humanity's spirit. Instead, humanity had broken the chains that bound the entire galaxy. The age of empire was over. The age of freedom had begun. And in the vastness of space, free people moved between the stars, choosing their own destinies among the endless possibilities of the universe.